walk away from it? That's the post from John Aravosis. He cites economist Paul Krugman, who says that if the bill gets any worse, Democrats should vote against it. Krugman goes on to say it would be disastrous if health care goes the way of the economic stimulus plan earlier this year. He says, as you may recall, that plan, which was clearly too weak even as originally proposed, was made even weaker toward the support of 3 Republican senators. He says if the same thing happens to health reform, Republicans will walk away. Read more on that if you like from John at AmericaBlog.com. McMahon says WWE antics not a liability to Senate run. That's the post over at CNN's political ticker blog. The ticker says CEO Linda McMahon from WWE, who earlier this week announced that she's launching a Republican bid to challenge Senator Chris Dodd in a Democratic primary, told CNN today that she doesn't expect her company's colorful antics to serve as a liability to her campaign. McMahon, they say, who joins a crowded field of Republicans hoping to challenge Dodd, also said she can identify with the financial plight of many of the state's voters, since she and her husband Vince McMahon once had to declare bankruptcy. With your broadcast on Stand Up with Pete Dominic, I'm Patrick Therese.
Another broadcast update in 30 minutes. Listen to Pete Dominic on Stand Up with Pete Dominic. I'm sorry, and you are? I am Stephen Colbert. You have got to listen to Pete Dominic on Stand Up with Pete Dominic. If you don't, well, you're dumb.
Back with Frank Schaefer, getting a lot of email about how much you liked Frank's appearance today. If you've got a challenge for Frank, we'll put you right on right away. Frank is the author of Crazy for God, How I Grew Up as One of the Elect, helped found the religious right and lived to take all or almost all of it back. And he's got a new book coming out as well. The son of a very prominent evangelical preacher, Francis Schaefer. Frank, first of all, thanks again for joining us for the full hour. We really appreciate it. And for, of course, taking some phone calls. I think we wanted to go to Dan in New Jersey, right? Is that what we got, guys? Yeah, hey, Dan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, question. You talked about the LaHaye and Jenkins book, the stand-up, the Left Behind series. Can you just explain a little bit about your take on the synopsis and why the characters are weak?
I have no idea of the literary merit of the books or the non-literary merit. I read the first one because Jerry's a friend of mine. He and I actually were working on a baseball book together years ago, believe it or not. So I read his first one, and I've just read the jacket copy of the other 16, seen they've launched a video game, did a publicly traded company of Left Behind stuff, for their multi-million-dollar empire, and that's it. So I can't comment on that aspect of it, but I will tell you this, in the book that's going to be coming out in October, Patience with God, Faith for People Who Don't Like Religion or Atheism, I have a whole chapter on the books, because much as I like Jerry, and Tim LaHaye always treated me right back when we shared platforms, for instance, the National Religious Broadcasters, and we were both the keynote speakers. He's a decent guy. Nevertheless, what they've done is kind of like throwing gasoline into a daycare center and then playing with cigarettes and matches next to the window. Look, these books are about revenge against everybody who's not like us. And Jesus will come back and do what suicide bombers do in Baghdad every day, kill everybody on the street who doesn't agree with them. And these books revel in that. They're essentially the vicarious American evangelical version of the madrasa. The unwashed pagan dies, we all go to heaven, and meanwhile we have lurid descriptions of flesh melting from people's faces, blood running in the gutters, battles where the blood is hot deep in Israel as all the Jews who didn't believe are killed. On and on it goes. It's a kind of a violent porn done under the rubrics of Christian books. Ironically, by the way, my novels can't be sold in quote-unquote Christian bookstores because once in a while the F word shows up in them. But this stuff can all be sold. And so, we basically have a group of paranoid, deluded people who think the end is here. That Obama perhaps is the Antichrist, or is the Antichrist if you're, a third of the conservatives living in New Jersey. Jerry Jenkins, Tim LaHaye, decent as they are, have fed into this. And essentially, they're writing books for lunatics to make them even crazier than they were before they read them. And it's just nuts. It would be one thing if these were novels in the real sense of fiction, but what they think they're doing is fictionalizing true events that are actually going to happen. So they're writing these as kind of historical novels about true events of history that hasn't happened yet. And, you know, it feeds, it sort of does on the theological side what Glenn Beck does on Fox every day, which is basically to play Russian roulette with the most unstable element of our culture. And it's just a matter of time until these things coalesce, and you have unstable people, like the guy in Pittsburgh who goes off and shoots policemen because they're going to take his guns away, he thinks. Somebody walks into a Holocaust museum in Washington, blows away the black security guard. You know, we see this stuff happen, these random acts. But there is a very profitable industry. They're essentially making their living off what I think is winding up the unhinged and making them even more unhinged.